Hello, everybody, and welcome to Kingdom Lifestyle Ministries. Follow the Fire podcast on Tuesday nights. We're so glad that you're here. So we're pretty much just going to get right into it tonight. This is a question that has come up a lot since pretty much before we had our little one about, when it comes to homeschooling or like sending our children to school, that type of thing. And so tonight we're essentially just having a very laid back conversation with y'all. Why I homeschool, why we chose homeschool. And so really quick, I just want to bring the Lord into this conversation before we go into it. And so go ahead and just pray with me where you are. Lord, we just thank you for this time together. We invite you into this space, God. I pray that you would be in these conversations that we'll have tonight. Lord, you are just welcome to be here with us, and I pray, Lord, that you would get the glory, and all the honor and praise out of everything said tonight, Lord. And I pray that you would have your way. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, you guys, if this is your first time here, my name's Arlene President, and this is
Neil President.
He's my husband, if you didn't know that.
She's my wife. No, I'm just kidding.
Anyway, you guys, so I need you guys to do me a favor. Can you go ahead, share and subscribe to our channel? Go ahead and share this link, share it on your social media, and then go ahead and hit the subscribe button and make sure to hit the little bell notification on YouTube so that you don't miss out whenever we go live.
Yeah.
But we do go live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Okay. All right. Getting into, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So tonight's conversation is a juicy conversation, okay? It's a conversation that some people might get upset about. So we're not having this conversation tonight to get upset. We're not upset, and we also don't want anybody else to be upset. It's just a conversation, a nice laid back conversation, and a conversation that we're also allowing God into and allowing him to kind of dictate what we should do here. So we want to have this conversation just from a Christian worldview and perspective, and kind of what it looks like to maybe raise your children in school, some of the things you might come across, and what it looks like to raise your children outside of school.
And what our convictions are, what God has called us to do,
personally. Yeah.
So we're excited to share with you guys, and again, this conversation isn't to get heated, because I know there might be some controversial things within this topic that I know some people may get upset about.
Yeah.
If you feel like is too much for you, that's okay.
Take a moment, step away, breathe. It's gonna
Yeah.
be all right. All right.
And please, if you have any questions while we're talking, ask away. We get questions all the time about why we're
Yeah.
doing what we're doing.
And
And
if you have
so,
any comments as well, things that you want to add,
yeah.
we'd love to see them.
Yeah, whether you homeschool or whether you send your children to school, public school or private school, if you have anything that you want to share, yeah, please share with us. And just remember to be respectful and be respectful towards people that don't think exactly like you or have just different viewpoints on stuff. So it's good to keep those things in mind when we're talking about topics that can be a little controversial. Okay, so
Yeah.
now that we're getting into it, why I homeschool. That is the title of tonight's episode. And so, by the title, as you all can probably tell, I do homeschool our son. Now, I'm going to tell you this right off the bat. I come from a family that does not homeschool. Okay.
Correct.
I grew up going to both a combination of private school in my earlier years and then public school pretty much from like second grade and like pretty much, yeah, all the way to high school. I went to university. I actually got my degree in music education. So I went to university to be a music teacher. And I taught in schools for 3 years. And so I've been in the school setting for quite a while. And yeah, so a little bit, yeah, like I said, a little bit of background about me. I don't come from a family that homeschools. It's looked like weird in my family
Yeah.
as to, like why would you homeschool? I don't know. It's not necessarily seemed like a positive thing.
Right.
Now
Not
Neil,
encouraged for sure.
yeah, it's not a normal thing. I don't know, but yeah. So Neil, I don't know if you want to share with them a little bit about your background with this.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my background, actually, I went to public school for all the years of my life, from uh, probably pre like Head Start and all that stuff, all the way to through college and stuff. I went through public schools, public college, and everything. And so, um, my experience wasn't terrible, but there was a lot of things that I dealt with. I never even considered homeschooling as something that was a possibility. It just wasn't really something that I heard about or something that was on my radar at
Yeah.
all. I definitely did not grow up thinking I'm going to homeschool my child. I
No.
thought to myself, well, I'm going to obviously do with them what I know, and that's just to kind of put them in the school system. And this train of thought of homeschooling actually never crossed my mind until a few years back. And we'll get into why that kind of crossed our mind. But my experience within the school system was, I was, influenced in certain ways to, want to fit in and do other things that other kids were doing, and it was tough in some ways. In some ways, I feel like it was good, and in some ways, I feel like it wasn't good. And we'll talk about some of those things as we get further in. But
Hmm.
homeschooling is something that God actually placed on our heart.
Yeah. So really quick before we continue, so you said you've been to public school and everything. Do you have any association with like teaching or anything like that today?
Oh, good question. Good question. I do actually. I currently work at a school. I am not a teacher per se. I'm a paraprofessional, but seeing how everything goes down behind the scenes, guys, let me tell you, a lot of the times what you think is going on behind the scenes, what they paint to you up front, is not what's going on behind the scenes, and you'll never hear about it if you're not there. Okay, I am there. That's why I'm saying this. A lot of parents, if you knew, you wouldn't do it. But once again, I'm not trying to discourage you from doing it, but I am
No,
going to tell
absolutely
you
not.
what's going on behind the scenes, though. Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, I am a teacher. I do work in the. I am a paraprofessional. I do work in the school system, and there are. Um,
What is a paraprofessional, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, good question. So a paraprofessional actually work with children who are more. Um, uh,
Like special needs?
yeah, it's like special needs. They have impairments and they have different things where they struggle to learn. Not all of them are in the same area
Mm.
mentally. Some of them are autistic. Some of them are they just have trouble controlling their emotions. Some of them may have trouble with dyslexia, where they kind of mix up letters and words, and they just need a little bit of extra help. Some of them cannot concentrate whatsoever, and so they need somebody to constantly tell them, "Hey, hey, make sure
Like
you
extra
concentrate."
support.
Extra support.
Yeah.
That's what I am. So I'm extra support. And my job is very rewarding because I love it. Although I'm not going to be there too much longer, but I love it, and I also will say that it's a tough job. It's
Yeah.
a tough job because
Yeah. Those of you who have worked in the education field, like I was a teacher, Neil's currently teaching. So what goes on in schools is, like Neil said, it's very rewarding, but it's also very hard. I remember I taught in schools for 3 years, and um yeah, I taught music. And so um it can be very tough, working in the school system. But honestly, like the best part for me, like were the kiddos. I miss, those kids are going to be my kids forever, and I miss them. I think about them from time to time. But would I go back to the school system? No, the Lord called me out of that um some years ago now. I don't remember the exact year, but it's been some years now for sure, since I stepped away from the school system, from being a teacher. And it wasn't until we got pregnant with our little one that those things really started, like, we started asking ourselves those questions and asking the Lord for guidance on that. You know um
yeah.
Before we go further down that road, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No,
Okay.
we're good. Let's go. Let's go down the
All
road.
right. So we're going down this road. Okay. So, yeah. So when I was pregnant with our little one, we began to just ask the Lord, a lot of questions, because our son was a miracle baby. I don't know if you guys know that, but our son was a miracle baby, and he was God's promise to us. Um, and so we just began to ask God for guidance on how to raise our child, once he was here, and things like that. And many times the Lord just kind of confirmed over and over, whether it was through dreams or through people, or I don't know, something we were listening to
Hmm.
about, train up your child in the way that they should go. And when they grow up, they will not depart.
Yeah.
Um, that's something that came up a lot, but also I feel the Lord was really giving me a very strong uh
Impression.
impression, yes, to homeschool our children, not just the one that we have right now, but our future children as well. And now I'll tell you this: I never thought I would say I would homeschool. Not because I thought about it in a negative way, but just because it was simply nothing that I actually ever thought of. It was not on my radar. Like I said, I don't come from a family that homeschools. Like my extended family, either like they don't really do the homeschool thing, and so
Yeah.
it's not something that I grew up really like paying too much attention about, like, to, or really thinking about or considered. um and so yeah, and then when I mean, I literally went to university to go get a whole education degree, and it's so funny to me, like, I went to school for that, I got my degree, I taught in schools, and the Lord's just like, all right, congratulations, but I want you here. And so
He had his reasons for
yes,
sure. He already
absolutely.
knew, even though we didn't know.
For sure. But the really cool thing about this whole thing is like how the Lord allowed me to go through that. I definitely will say I developed some skills. I learned a lot of things, when it comes to like education. And of course, those of you that know me know I'm a musician and stuff. And so there's some things there, and then from the education aspect, like I was like, okay, cool. But I love how God is using what I learned back in those days. Um, and kind of like implementing now in my home with my little one, and how I will continue to develop my own style of homeschooling, as more kids come, and as my
Yeah.
our current one continues to grow, and I'm growing with him too, because
Yeah. We're
there's
learning
a
in the
lot to learn
process.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
absolutely.
I would say that one of the also like things that caused me to be very interested in homeschooling was when we began to fast and pray. um, Even before Arlene was pregnant, we started fasting and praying, and we started to ask the Lord, whatever's in our life that shouldn't be there, Lord, whatever you want to take away, show us or whatever. And we started to realize just the levels of demonic things that were being pushed toward children, and that we were taught a lot of these things. They were just taught to us as normal from the school system, and a lot of things that we had no idea that there was anything wrong with it from like a worldly perspective, and we weren't taught these things by our parents either necessarily. But as the Lord began to open our eyes and show us things, we were like, whoa, okay, this is not okay. Like, I don't think that I should have been taught this, much less for me to actually like put my children in a place where they would be taught some of these things. um the world is okay with certain things, and they won't prioritize your children the way that you're going to prioritize your children. And so it really started to get my mind moving, and I said to myself, like, I definitely want to be very careful, because a lot of the things are pulling your children away from the Lord before they even get the opportunity to make up their mind if they want to follow the Lord. Like,
Yeah.
they've already had so many things implanted in their spirit that there's so much confusion. The Bible's teaching one thing, and this thing is teaching the opposite. And then in so many areas that they're just like, what? So what's true? Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't know what it is. Okay, so we're going to address some of those things tonight. So we're going to go ahead and dive into what are some of the we're going to do the negatives first. Things that I've noticed in school during my time of being at school. And Arlene's going to go ahead and throw in some things too, because of course she was a teacher as well. Um, Things that I've noticed at school. The academics are actually pretty low. The school system will try to make you feel bad, or the government will try to make you feel bad when you say that you want to homeschool, because they'll try to make you feel like, well, you're dumb and you can't do it because you don't have all of the accreditations that we have, and you don't have like genius people teaching your kids like we do. The fact of the matter is that through working at a school, I can see that the academics are actually not super high. Okay,
And
they
just the
have
grading
the
scales,
grading scales have
yeah,
definitely been
changed.
changed drastically. So, what used to be considered passing, um, considered like an A, like, is now much lower than it was before. It's probably like an 85 or something, whereas
Mm.
before it was like 90 to 100, and everything else also has been lowered. So it's kind of like, it looks good on a report card. Okay, my child gets straight A's, but actually, if you were to compare them from what was happening 10 years ago, what they're calling an A now would have been a B back then. What they're calling a B now would have been like a C or a D back then. What they're calling a C now would have been like failing back then. And but it looks good on the report card because it just has a grade number, and it's all fine. But whenever you're in the school system, you start to realize, like, ah, these children are struggling. They're really struggling. And it's not to bash anybody's kids or to scare you, but a lot of the children are really struggling. I'm seeing a lot of kids. It's normal. Like, the fifth grade students are at like a third grade reading level. The fourth grade students are at like a second grade reading level, like second grade level in math. They have, honestly, some of it is not the school's fault. Some of it is due to allowing TikTok and social media, YouTube, and those types of things to raise people's children. And so those children are so, they can't focus for more than 5 minutes. So they won't listen to their teachers because they can't focus on what their teacher's saying. Everything has to be given to them in the form of like, it has to be on TV, it has to be on an iPad, it has to be on electronics, or they won't get it. Like, their brain, after listening to you talk for 30 seconds, shuts off. They're like, I don't hear anything anymore. So it takes 10 times more effort for a teacher to teach a child what it would have been easy to teach them back in the day. Okay, so some of it is not the school system's fault, but the academics in the school are not very high. And so when we're talking about homeschooling, a lot of the times when you're homeschooling, your student or your child will get more than they're going to learn at school, because you're going to go at their pace, one, and also
Yeah.
you're comparing them. A lot of people are comparing them to maybe like the top 10% of the school. Oh, they're not where this student is, so they're not smart enough. And actually, like, 90% of the school, you'd be surprised, is at a very low academic level.
Yeah. I actually want to throw in, when as I was older, like my high school years and um, university years, I remember coming across many people that were homeschooled. And yeah, maybe some of them, I guess they would be a little like socially awkward. But a lot of the homeschool people that I met, they were actually the complete opposite. They're actually super like social, very like they had a very like bubbly personality or just like out there and just very friendly, things like that. And so I think there is this whole misconception that all homeschool kids are weird, which is not true because I've seen it. Like I actually do have friends that were homeschooled too. That I'm like, okay, it's not all of them, and that was definitely something that like when I was in high school, like I'd hear some of my friends talk about like, oh, so and so is homeschooled, aren't they weird and whatnot.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, I learned from experience that not all of them are actually weird. But I kind of want to backtrack a little bit into, things that I've seen in school. So, you know, if you guys didn't know already, I love Jesus, I love the Lord, and I believe in instilling godly values in my children. So I'll tell you one experience, from when I was younger, like I want to say middle school, maybe, when I was in middle school. So I remember one time they had this whole, I forgot what they called it, but it was like it was getting close to the end of the year, and we were having this big, like, I'm gonna call it party, like in like the outside of the school, and they had those big blow up bouncy house things, and they had food, they had water games. They had all these types of fun activities for kids to do. However, they also invited a palm reader. I
oh yeah,
didn't know any better, and so one of my friends was like, "Oh, let's go over here." And I go, and this lady reads my palm, and I didn't actually know what that was. But she was like, "Oh yeah, this lady's just gonna look at your palm," and I'm like, "But okay." Like, so I gave her my palm and she started, reading my palm, and I don't honestly remember what she said. I remember I told my mom about it and she had gotten so upset. She's like, why would they have that at school? Mind you, I mean, I went to public school. And so basically, like, my mom was like really uncomfortable with that. Um, but, as I've gotten older and as I've been in, in the education system myself, I've definitely seen some things, and have heard from other colleagues like things like that where they do invite maybe like a psychic, or they invite a magician, they invite
um, what those people called
palm
it?
readers,
Yeah.
fortune tellers,
Hmm.
to their school events
Oh,
and
hypnotists. I
hypnotists.
remember whenever I was graduating from high school, they actually had invited a hypnotist, and
Interesting.
I feel like they had done this one time before, but he was hypnotizing people on stage in front of us, and they were doing crazy things that they didn't even know that they were doing. I didn't understand yet that those are works of the occult,
Yeah.
and I understand that now, but that was just something that was done to, like, there was an entire auditorium of kids that
Yeah.
were, just
That's
here
crazy.
participating in the occult things that the school just like invited this person to do. They didn't know any better. I didn't even know any better at the time. I felt kind of
Yeah.
like iffy about it, like,
It was not something that we were taught necessarily.
yeah.
But okay, so like, yeah, basically to where we are now, we're just like, yeah, that's not okay. So like, why? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that. I would not be comfortable, if I had children going to a school and like the school's out here inviting occultists to,
There's no permission slip or anything. Like, you just wouldn't
yeah.
know. There's a special event, and then you show up to the special event, and that's what's happening. And then how would the parent know that that was going to happen?
Yeah.
They, and a lot of times their children, they don't have a relationship with their children where their children won't even tell them. So
Yeah.
they just, their children are opening demonic doors. That's just
Yeah.
one or two of them, but like their
For
children
sure.
are opening demonic doors and they don't even know what's happening. And
Yeah.
while their children's
So
personalities are being shaped and like shifted from one thing to another, they're trying to figure out like what's the root of it.
for sure. And that's one of the things. One of the other things I wanted to share as well. So this is more like general, but as I was teaching, a lot of my colleagues were being shoved into classrooms of like 25, 30 students for one teacher. that is a lot of students. Okay, one adult to like 30 students. I remember my student teaching days. I was shoved into a classroom with 35 students, and I was teaching high school at that time, and I was like, "Whoa, that's a lot of kids." So first of all, if you don't know about that, that it can be really hard to manage 30, 35 kids, just even 25. Um, it's a lot, and I personally will say that teachers do not get paid enough to do what they do and to deal with all that they do have to deal with. And it's I will tell you right off the bat, it is hard for every child in a classroom of 25, 35 children to actually learn everything that you're intending for them to learn. From the teacher's point of view, I can't actually, I can hope and do my part, my best to try and teach them and have different styles of teaching, making sure that, verbally and like physically that they see what I'm trying to teach them. But it's pretty difficult for a lot of children to actually learn because children all learn at different paces. And then a lot of times in schools, well, they don't actually have the extra support. I've taught in schools where we didn't have an aide, or we only had one aide for the entire school, and things like that. Very difficult for the children that actually do need the support. And I feel for them because they want to learn. They generally like want to be there, but it's really hard for them, and there's only so much like the teacher can do. I remember having a few students in my classroom where they were either special needs or like they had something very specific. And, I'm trying to manage a classroom, full of students, and there's only one of me. And it can be a lot. And it can be a lot for the students as well. It's very overwhelming for them too. And, we're all just trying our best here. And I've had a lot of colleagues say the same thing too. And Neil mentioned something very interesting, the grading scale. I remember, especially once COVID hit, I remember being told by one of my principals that I was not allowed to fail any of my students. And whether they showed up or did the work or didn't do the work, I was supposed to give them an A no matter what. Um, yeah, that honestly, that was tough because it's like, I still had to, have my lesson plans in place and things like that and spend so much time doing this, doing that. And, I feel like once COVID hit personally, I feel like the grading scale changed, and but also students were not as like challenged to do the work or to do a good job at doing their what they were
Yeah.
supposed to do, what they were required to do, things like that. Um, yeah, I'm gonna stop there for now. But those are just some of the things that I've seen, from the teacher side, but also what I mentioned before about the palm reading. When I actually was a student in middle school, things that I've seen, things that I experienced, whatnot, where I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to step back a little bit and talk about some of the things that I'm seeing now. So we talked about some of our
Mm,
experiences at the school that I'm working at now. Some of the things that I see on a very regular basis are um, yoga. I see yoga a lot. I walk into certain classes, and the teacher has all of the students like, they have some meditation, breathing music in the background, and the students are all sitting there with their things like this, you know, meditating. There's Christian children in there, there's Muslim kids in there, there's like children of all different backgrounds, and they're in there like doing yoga. They don't know that it's demonic. They don't know that they're inviting in demonic things. They just start doing it. There's special needs kids in there, autistic kids in there. They just see everybody else doing it and they start doing it too. Then it's a dangerous thing. Once again, if a Christian parent knew that that's what was happening, they probably wouldn't be okay with it, but they're not told about these things. So there are doors being opened for their kids that they don't even know are being opened. Another area is um, the gym. A lot of times in the gym, they're doing stretches and stuff like that. And instead of doing normal stretches like we used to do back in the day, hey, everybody, lean over and touch your toes. Now it has to be yoga. So in every season, if it's Christmas, it's going to be like some type of Santa Claus yoga thing. If it's going to be Grinch yoga, If it's Easter, it's going to be like Easter bunny yoga. If it's whatever it is, like they find a way to incorporate yoga into everything. And it's for those of parents who are Christian, that's concerning because our children are opening demonic doors, or they're opening doors for our children, and we don't really have any say about it. Okay, a couple of other things that I've noticed is there are demonic holidays that are being celebrated, that are being kind of pushed on your kids because they don't know, they're not teaching from a Christian perspective or worldview.
Right,
So
it's
I'm
a
seeing them,
secular system, which
right.
is something
So
that you
then
have to understand. Yeah.
I'm seeing them teaching children about like shamans and, oh, it's just another, another religious belief. I'm hearing them teaching about just, like just being inclusive. They're teaching them about um, Day of the Dead. They're teaching them about all types of things, and then they have them sit down and create like little things, coloring books and things like that with Day of the Dead stuff and stuff like that. Once again, I see Christian children doing this. I see Muslim children doing this. I see children that don't believe in God or any particular God doing this. They're all just doing it. So once again, they're all opening doors, and they don't know that they're opening doors. Me as in the position that I'm in, I'm just like, oh my gosh, my spirit is so disturbed. But I'm not the teacher and I'm not the principal of the school, so I can't walk up in front of the school and be like, hey, you know what? This is demonic, and y'all are not supposed to be doing this. I just, my heart is just burning. I'm like, my child is not gonna do this. Okay. I mean, once again, the parents, a lot of them don't even know that that's happening. Okay.
Yeah, but I know, for example, like, I grew up in public school. My mom was definitely an involved parent. So I will say, if you are an involved parent, that is awesome, even if your children aren't in public school. I remember my mom would actually write letters, or, yeah, like a letter to my teachers when I was growing up, letting them know I was not going to be participating in, I don't know, like Halloween,
Yeah.
I don't know, like Day of the Dead stuff. Like she's like, do not include Arlene, or she would just simply not send me to school and just call and be like, Arlene won't be coming in today. Things like that. So if you're an involved parent and keeping up, with all the stuff, that you don't agree with, that's awesome. Keep doing that. And if you don't know, then I highly, highly encourage you to get as involved as you can. I think that would be great if sending your children to school is like all you can really do right now. There's no shame in that.
Yeah.
Just learn about what they're teaching your kids at school. And be as
Yeah.
involved, because
Tell them ahead of time.
a lot of times they I'll say this: the world will teach your children. The school system will absolutely teach your children, but they will teach them according to their standards.
Right.
And a lot of times those aren't necessarily aligned with godly values. And so there are some pros and cons to sending your child to public school, private school, whatever, secular school. And so
Yeah.
that's just something you and your significant other would have to talk about if you have one, in regards to sending your children to school or homeschool. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times also, like, these things are part of the curriculum, right? So like I've seen
Yes.
where Harry Potter is part of the curriculum. Where like witchcraft books and fantasy books, and
Hmm.
not necessarily witchcraft books, but Harry Potter is a book full of witchcraft. It's called Witchcraft and Sorcery. Um, uh, Things like magic, they're very like obsessive about magic for some reason. Like I think they think that that's like a something where they can get kids to be interested. So they're like, oh yeah, think of it like this: like you have magic powers, and you could. It's like, but that's demonic though. Okay, so I don't want my child to be taught about no magic powers unless it's about the power of the Holy Spirit, because once they get into magic powers, thinking about like, oh, how can I, do this with the magic wand? I've heard so many kids being prompted by the teachers, if you could live in a haunted mansion, or like I don't know, some other place, where would you live? They're all saying, oh well, I would live in this because I would just do this thing that Harry Potter's doing, and I would just become friends with the ghosts in the house. And it's like, you could just tell how far left their minds have already gone through all of the stuff that has been placed in their spirit. These are Christian children, these are Muslim children, these are atheist children. They're just completely like open to any and everything because that's how they've been trained up. Okay. So I'm going to move on from that. There's a lot of demonic things that are kind of like poured out, and they just kind of like are receivers of a lot of things. They have to sift these things out and figure out uh what they're supposed to do through all of these
Yeah.
things, like what's right, what's wrong, what does the Bible say. A lot of times they're not being taught, like especially about spiritual warfare and biblically, like what is magic in the Bible. Magic is demonic in the Bible. They're not being taught this at home, and then they go to school and they're being taught like, oh, this is something that you want to aspire to be.
Hmm.
But when as that they begin to aspire to do that, they're basically aspiring toward occult things and witchcraft. Okay. Another point that I want to talk about is um, it seems like the Christian worldview is being pushed to the side. And that kind of sounds obvious because the school's perspective is they want your child to be successful in a worldly way. They don't care about like what religion they are or but we do live in a Christian society. Like we live in a Christian nation. And so the schools are very like conscious about being inclusive. So it's like we don't want to say anything that's going to upset the Muslim community. We don't want to say anything that's going to upset this community if they're not Christian. So we're not going to say the name of Jesus, but then they're actually allowing other students because they want to be inclusive to like they're like have their prayer mats out in the hallway and they're praying for Ramadan or for whatever. They're like openly worshiping their gods in the school, and the school is teaching about what they're doing and like kind of pushing it forward, but they don't actually stop and talk about like, okay, so what do Christians actually believe? Like Jesus died on the cross for your sins, so that they're not going to say that. but but they're teaching Christian children about other things that are not okay for them to be learning about. And once again, like it's not something that you as a parent have a say in necessarily. You can say like, I don't want my child to be in that class on this particular day, but like they would say Christians like to shove things down people's throat. Like they're actually like shoving things down your children's throat without your children realizing it, that are causing confusion in their mind.
Well,
Whereas
that
other
and
religions are being like catered to.
yeah, well, I'm gonna go there and say with the shoving down the throat, the whole thing, the whole culture of I identify as XYZ.
Yeah,
Some children are identifying as animals, you guys, and that's kind of concerning and alarming. And I do think that the world just needs more access to sound therapy, because
yeah,
some of these things are just kind of concerning. Like your child should not be, um, identifying themselves to an animal
yeah.
or
And
something that
that's
God did not call them to be,
right. And that's
and
another
being
thing.
serious about it. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
Like that, you literally would get canceled in today's society
For telling a
for
child he not a cat.
yeah. And so that in itself is like, yeah.
Or for telling a boy that they're not a girl, or a girl that they're not a boy. Like it's kind of like if a boy says there's a little boy that says, I'm a girl, I'm a woman. I'm like, no, you're not. You're a little boy. I'm not about to play that game with you at all. Okay. But in today's society, being working at school, saying that to a child could get you fired.
Yeah.
Whether or not that child knows what they're saying or not. This child that says that, he's probably 4 years old. He just doesn't even really probably understand what he's saying. But in our society, they will take that and go way left with it and be like, oh, okay, you feel like a woman? Okay, so like you want to be a woman today and you want to be a man tomorrow? Why don't you wear a dress? Like that's where our society will take that. Because it's a very sick and twisted society. Instead of teaching them, no, you're a little boy. Okay? Let's just cut that off right now here at this age. Okay? Um
I think that there's a lot of value in just, affirming children, especially young children, and who God made them.
right.
You are fearfully and wonderfully made, with scripture. Um, Obviously, I know like a lot of times in public settings that won't necessarily happen, especially like secular settings. But I will tell you this. I remember growing up, like I had more guy friends than girlfriends. And I definitely would say this, oh, I'm a tomboy. Can you imagine if I was a little girl today saying I was a tomboy? I'd probably be told like to go,
Join some community
extreme,
somewhere.
some extremes and like, not just like redirected to like, like that's, you guys know what I'm trying to get at,
Yeah.
they would take that to an extreme, and there's a lot of things that I just disagree with because I think children a lot of times they're just children, And the fact that a lot of school systems now are requiring, I don't know all of them, but I do know like they are like pushing this down like little kids, like preschool, kindergarten, the whole identity thing,
Yeah.
and the gender stuff. And it's like, well, I personally don't think children that young need to be learning that in school. Like
Yeah.
when I went to school, I learned about handwriting, I learned my ABCs, I learned my numbers, my shapes, my colors. I learned how to add, subtract, all this thing, like all these things, and I wasn't being forced to like decide if I want to be a boy or a girl, if that makes sense. So I, yeah, I'm going there, and I will say, like, I am a firm believer that children do not need to learn about that. It's
Yeah.
especially at such a young age. And so that to me has been a turn off
Yeah.
for the
And
past few years.
I'll also say that, after that whole era where people were going down that path, the school system kind of at some point in my mind it was like a joke. It was like, wait, so like we're going to look at how can you take language arts seriously when you can look at the word they and now use it to mean one person? Like I am a they. So like how are we defining, how can you even teach them in the language class? Like, how can you teach them for like an elementary school child properly when they're reading this and you're telling them, oh, yeah, when you're talking about they, you're referring to more than one person, but the teacher's having them call them they?
Yeah.
It's like, well,
That's
then,
actually something I'm
well,
genuinely curious about how that works.
yeah, it's like, what's
But
this? So I'm
yeah.
referring to you as more than one person, but so then you have to change the whole book. Whenever we're talking about before, the book said that, okay, well, there's two genders. There's a male and a female, and these are what the chromosomes look like, and this is what defines a male, and this is what defines a female. Very clear. Well, now whenever they start, because the school system's just adopting everything from the world, now that it looks like that, what do you think they're teaching the children in the school? Like they can't teach them out of that biology book anymore because now that's hate speech or whatever. So they're just gonna throw out that biology book and start teaching a whole different biology, and then like kids are just in there like, I'm uncomfortable. I don't even know what to do here. Like, but some of them are like they think that that's higher education. So like, oh yeah, you're just not like with the times, or you're not smart, you're not educated, but I went to college, so now I know this and you don't know this because you're just a normal old layperson that doesn't know anything. But it's like it really does do something to somebody's mind whenever it's constantly changing. Their truth changes by whatever's going on in society, and our truth stays constant. If you're a Christian, our truth is constant.
Well, it's not even our truth, that's God's truth.
Right. God's word is our
Yes.
anchor, and His truth is constant. So, what we're going to teach our children versus what they might teach our children, it might look different in the next 2 or 3 years. It might, like, our child is obviously not even of age to go to school, but whenever he is of age to go to school, whenever he's 4 or 5 years old, what they're teaching in school might be even more demonic than it is now.
I
And
wouldn't be
I'm
surprised.
thinking to myself, like, I don't want them teaching my child that it's okay to be a cat or that he's a girl or that, like any of these things. And they're perfectly okay. I've already seen the route that can go down. Like, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So I would rather train up my child in the way that he should grow than throw him into a system and let them train him up. And
Absolutely.
who knows what's going to happen there. Okay.
Yeah. I Okay, so kind of like moving on a little bit,
Yeah.
I want to go ahead and say that, if you are a parent, you are your child's first teacher. I think you are more than qualified to teach your child. That is my personal opinion, of course. Um, so obviously, I've heard the argument of like, not everybody's meant to be a parent, not everybody is a good parent. And yeah, I think you guys are absolutely right. But where I'm coming from is, if you like are a good parent, you are a loving parent, you're there for your kids, and like, I do personally think you are more than qualified to teach your child. Like you teach them some really hard stuff, things that maybe teachers at school wouldn't ever be able to actually teach your child. Um, and there are so many resources for parents that choose to homeschool. I know one of let's talk about some misconceptions here. Some of the misconceptions is that there aren't many resources for parents who choose to homeschool. You know, especially this subject is a lot for, I guess, maybe teaching subjects that maybe the parent might feel uncomfortable teaching. Like if you're not good at math or you're not good at science, like, are you even qualified? Do you even have resources? Those types of things. And the answer is you're definitely qualified. You can definitely use curriculum. There's so many resources out there. There's co-ops. You can get together with some other homeschooling parents that, maybe that's one of their strengths. Like there's so many resources, online tutorials. You can hire a tutor, things like that. So many good resources out there
Yeah.
for parents and for kids. And the best thing is that you can go at your child's pace.
Yeah.
So,
And that might be
yeah.
faster than everybody else, and that might
Hmm.
be a little slower than everybody else, and that's okay. As we've experienced, like as you grow up, it's gonna make very little difference what everybody else is doing around you, and it's gonna make more difference what you're going to do with the things that you were taught in school. Because the smartest person in your class is not necessarily always the richest person or the person that's most successful. Sometimes they were just the smartest in class and now they work at Walmart or something. Okay, so like that mindset of trying to kind of like the comparisons and stuff like that, they don't always work out the way that you think that they're going to work out.
Yeah.
Okay, so training up your child at their pace in the way that they learn, this is something that they're going to be doing in the school system anyways, a lot of the times when they can. But as they get older, especially if it's a class of 25, 35 students, they're going to operate with the masses. They're going to be like, okay, there's 35 students in this class, so I'm going to try to teach this as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
And if the 10 people don't get it, I don't have time for them to all 10 come and ask me a question while I'm teaching. So they're just not going to get it. And hopefully they're going to do the homework and hopefully they pick it up. If they don't, sorry. That's kind of how school system works. But when you're teaching your child one-on-one, the chances of them not learning what they need to learn are a lot slimmer.
For sure. And one thing I will say, that about homeschooling is that anything can turn into a lesson when you homeschool your child. You want to go outside, like let's go pick up some sticks and like make trees out of the sticks or something.
Yeah.
Like you, especially you have little ones, they're just so curious about everything. You can learn about colors, like in the fall with the trees, the leaves. You want to go, I don't know, to the museum, like let's go
And
down
then you
in
can
the forest preserve,
yeah.
let's go
And then
walk
you can
and
actually
learn
train
about
them up
nature.
with like natural, like good like life skills.
Yeah,
A lot
I
of the
think
things
life
that we
skills are
learn in
important.
school, yeah, a lot of things that we learn in school are kind of like, things that I don't know, just make you seem smart. They're kind of like crafted for the
Yeah.
masses. But then what about things like learning how to cook certain things or learning how to, do certain things in like in math? Like wouldn't it have been awesome to learn how to do taxes? Like things that you're actually gonna
Useful things.
need? Like wouldn't it have been awesome to learn how to like I don't know, like certain things like that you are going to actually need as a life skill. Um,
Cooking, cleaning, uh yeah, taxes, things like
yeah,
that. Because there's, it's so crazy today, with when it comes to like cooking, there's a lot of people I know that don't know how to cook. Not to say that I'm like this chef or anything, because I'm totally not. But, I think there's value in learning how to cook. I think it's a survival skill. Because what happens in the day that, all the convenience stores and, fast food chains like are just not available to you? Like, how are you going to survive? You need to learn how to cook.
yeah,
We can
even how
go,
to grow something.
yeah, like planting a
Yeah,
garden, things like that. Like some really good survival skills, even just going camping and learning how to make a fire or,
yeah,
things like that. I don't know. There's so many things that so many directions you can go with homeschooling, and there really isn't like a right or wrong. And I know, yeah, I know that your kids will, from like, so far, from my experience, at least with my little one, like he's been learning so much. And as opposed to like if I would have had him in like daycare or something. My little one is definitely learning a lot and very quickly, and I'm very satisfied with that. And the best part about it, for me, is that I know, um, that I am walking out and what God called me to do. I am truly a believer that us women, we're called to be homemakers. We are nurturers very naturally. God wired us that way. And I am learning how to be a homemaker. I'm I'll be the first one to say, like, there are some days I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm like, Lord, just help me. Because if you're a mom, if you're a stay-at-home mom, there are some very hard days. But then they're so rewarding too when your little one actually like picks up on what you've been trying to teach them, and even just like, I don't know. There's a lot of rewarding in being a homemaker, taking care of your family. The Lord's actually really urged me and pushed me to like learn how to make a lot of things from scratch at home. And that's definitely a little journey I've been down on right now for the last, I don't know, maybe 6 months, 8 months, I don't know. And it's been so rewarding to me being able to be a stay-at-home mom and teach my little one, instill godly values to him, teach him how to worship God, reading the Bible together with him, even as a family, learning how to pray together. um, yeah, I have a lot of like books for him. I have both, like, just normal books, I guess you could say, for like children that like have like nursery rhymes and things like that, but I also have Christian children's books for my son as well that he really enjoys. And just talking to him about God, and playing Christian music and having little dance, I call them dance parties, where we put some upbeat Christian music and we just dance together in the living room.
Yeah.
Things like that.
And
Um,
he thinks it. He thinks it's the funnest thing in the world, and so
he does. That's awesome.
mm,
So there's a lot of great things in my experience that have come out from learning how to be a stay-at-home parent. Especially because I don't come from a family that did that. Um, and so I've actually reached out to friends that are homeschool parents that have grown up in that lifestyle. And I'm like, hey, so like I'm very new to this, and asking questions. If you come from a family that has not homeschooled before and you're the first one in your family to homeschool, don't be afraid to go ask questions um, to someone that does homeschool and they've done this for a long time. And I love how helpful and humble my friends have been, and how encouraging they have been too, to see me on my journey of homeschooling my little one, and just pouring into me as well, and just giving me other ideas of things to do, some activities, educational activities and whatnot. It's been so awesome,
yeah.
um, to be, for me, learning, but also to see him learn as well.
Yeah, God has actually been training up a lot of people, and
Hmm.
kind of just instructing a lot of people, um, who are walking in the spirit and who are listening to 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 homeschool their children for many reasons. Probably a lot of the reasons we just spoke about, but um, God, that's actually something that God's heart has been that, like, I want you to be very intentional about training up your child, because the way that the world is training up your child is not necessarily what I want them to be trained up
Yeah.
for. So I'm going to quickly go through three reasons why you might want to homeschool, why you might want to think about homeschooling. One of them is because you're able to train them up in the Lord, which the Bible says, train them up in the way they should grow, and they won't depart from it when they get older. In biblical times, they actually had schools for Christian. They had Jewish schools for Jewish children. They had, like different schools for the different types of children that there were, and there's value to that, because they understood that, like, if I go put my child in a school with pagans, then they're going to learn pagan stuff, and if I don't want them to be little pagans, then I'm going to put them in a Christian school. Okay, and some people still do that, right? They have private schools and stuff like that, but nobody, well, this brings me to number two. Nobody's going to prioritize your child's education or their faith the way that you're going to prioritize it.
That's actually really good.
Yeah, they don't care as much about your child's spirituality and whether or not they're going to, like, follow the Lord, what path they're going to take. Um, they simply care that maybe they'll be smarter and they'll be more successful. They'll be able to make more money, maybe. Um, that they make A's in class. That's kind of their end goal. But your end goal is not simply that, right? Because we understand that there's more to that. Like, this world is temporary. So my goal is not only to feed my child's mind, but to feed his spirit as well. And that in the end that he would be with the Father. Okay. And that's not just all about education. Okay. Number three, you can actually move around a lot easier when you homeschool. Why? Because you're in charge of the curriculum, to a certain extent. And you could do this from your home. You could do this from somebody else's home. You could do this from, if you were a traveling mother or father, or a family that moves every month, you could actually do it from wherever you
That's a
are.
lot
You
of
could do this
moving
from
every
a,
month.
yeah, you could do this from a hotel room, like wherever you are. You can actually
It's
homeschool them
true.
because you can just take the different things that they're going to need for the day with you. You can do this while you're on vacation.
Yeah.
So it's actually a lot more
That
flexible.
that and I've also looked into, like how long should you homeschool like different age groups and things like that. And I love that none of them require an 8
Yeah,
hour work day. I'm calling it work day because that is basically a work day for them and for me. But I love that, the hours that, approximately, for each age group, if you're going to homeschool, um it lets you know, like, approximately how many hours, and like of course the curriculum that you choose. It'll it'll tell you about how much time approximately this can take and whatnot. And I love that it's not the entire day, like, how actual school is. Because it's a big portion of the child's day. It's like 8 hours, seven, eight
yeah.
hours. It's a
And
work
then,
day.
yeah, when you think about it, actually, when your child's in the school system, they actually spend more time with the school than they do with you. So you
Hmm.
talk about training up your child, and you think about it. Okay, the day is 24 hours. We're probably asleep for 8 of those hours. Then they come home from school. They're probably, a lot of them, just watching TV or playing games. They probably actually spend a total of maybe 2 or 3 hours with you throughout the day, when they come home. And then it kind of, it's like, how am I actually being intentional and pouring into my child's life? Am
That's
I doing
important.
that? Am I training up my child, or am I just allowing him to be poured into by all these other sources, and I really don't even know what's being poured into him? And for the 2 hours that I have him, am I being intentional about those 2 hours, or am I still just busy, like my mind is somewhere else because I'm tired or whatever it is? If you're able to, I believe that the man is if you're able to work and allow your wife to be a stay at home mom, that's a beautiful thing, because your wife then is pouring into your children. And of course you guys have to talk about this and be on board, both of you.
For sure.
Okay. But it's a beautiful thing because you're instilling into them values, you're instilling into them time, and time equals relationship, and that's time that you don't get back, right? If you're only spending 2 to 3 hours with your child on a regular basis, then when you as they get older, you realize, well, they're kind of distant from me, and they don't really like trust me with certain things. I want them to trust me. I want them to come to me and tell me, but they don't have a relationship with me. They think like it's weird to be around mom and dad. Well, that's because they've only actually spent 2 hours with you throughout the day for the last 12, 15 years of their life. So, but when you raise them in a way that it's normal for us to spend time together, like we've been together our whole lives, they trust you with their secrets. You have to also be a safe space, but they trust you with their secrets. They trust you with certain things, and they want to let you in. And so these are just beautiful things that come with homeschooling and creating that environment for your kids that they won't necessarily get in a public school. I want to go ahead and address real quickly, okay, some of the falsehoods that are taught when it comes to homeschooling. So these are like stereotypes. One of them is that your child is going to be awkward. Arlene already addressed that. That doesn't always happen. Personality wise, some kids are awkward and some aren't. At the school that I work at, some kids, they're awkward. They're in the school system and they're super awkward. They will pass by
Yeah.
you and you'll say hello and they won't say a word. And you would think that, well, I mean, aren't they supposed to be super socialized and like
Well mannered.
well mannered because they grew up around other kids? No, like they're in fourth, fifth grade, and
I don't think it makes a difference,
it
honestly.
doesn't. It doesn't. One way or the other. If your child is homeschooled, it doesn't have any bearing on their personality if they're an outgoing child, they're going to get along with other children just fine.
Absolutely.
And if they are an awkward child or they just have a little bit more a harder time socializing, then they're going to have a hard time socializing whether they're in school or not. And that's just it. Okay, there's no correlation. Um, Number two, why are you taking the hard way? This is a one of the stereotypes. You're doing things the hard way. You're just being difficult. You're doing things the hard way. This will seem like the hard way, and I will not be one that will say it's easy because it does take effort. But you're giving up one hard for another hard, if that makes sense. It would be hard if your child goes to a regular school and then you don't have a relationship with them and there are things being poured into them. Now they're rebellious and you have no idea why because you weren't there. Like, that's hard versus you being with them and being intentional to pour the things into them that the Lord says to pour into them, as well as helping them to get an education. So both of them are going to be hard at some point or the other. One is just more intentional hard. I know what I'm taking on and I know what I'm pouring into my child. And that's a hard that I'm willing to go through rather than having to deal with, you know, other things coming into the household, things that are demonic, things that are against what we believe. My child arguing with me mm, about how the Bible isn't true because, you know, the school says that this is true and that can't be true if the Bible is true. So I choose to go with what the school is teaching me. Okay, you're gonna have different types of hard if
For
they're going through
sure.
the school system. So it's
So
hard one way or the other.
we are on one income, and in today's society it's actually pretty hard being on one income,
Yeah.
but it is doable, and just living within your means. I'm not the type of girl that like goes and gets her nails done. I've never been that girl. I honestly don't care about nails. I don't really care about getting like my hair done, things like that, things that cost a lot of money. Now, I do know that there are women that absolutely like to do those things. There's nothing wrong with that. We just live different lifestyles. We prefer different things. I have a family that I want to look after and like um, be a homemaker and understanding that we will be under one income, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I do feel that that is God's heart for my family, and so that's what I'm gonna walk in. And I'm
Yeah.
totally okay with not
And
having
then
all those other things.
I also want to make it very clear that just because you are homeschooling doesn't necessarily mean, from a woman's perspective, doesn't necessarily mean that you don't do anything financially. Because that lends itself to being entrepreneurial. You could be selling
Absolutely.
things, you could be doing other things that, mind you, when a child is homeschooling, they don't necessarily have to be in school for 8 hours. So your homeschooling curriculum might be 3 or 4 hours worth of work, and then you're teaching them things throughout the day, and then you have a lot more time to do other things. Okay. And so you could be actually bringing in income. It just won't look like a 9 to 5. Okay. So I just want to put that in somebody's ear in case you were thinking, well, then we just can't make it because I need to make an income. Maybe it might be
Yeah.
time
So
to,
I do also want to say this in our situation. I wholeheartedly believe that Neil is the provider for our family. He is the primary provider. He
yeah,
works to help, provide for his family. Now, me being a stay-at-home mom, um, I pour into our children, cook, clean, house chores, whatever. And Neil definitely helps him with like the housework and stuff and whatnot, which is awesome. I love and I'm so thankful for him to help me with that stuff. And I'm also actually working on launching my new business. For those of you that know, J Rafa, where I sell herbal homemade remedies and things like that, which will be launching soon.
which is pretty
Um,
awesome.
yes. And so
And
I'll
your
be
book as well.
in my book. Yes, I'm actually currently writing another one. And so, things like that. I'm doing stuff behind the scenes. I'm definitely not like bringing a whole lot of money per se, like my husband, but I am bringing a little something, where it can help like towards some bills
Yeah.
or, other little necessities that I might need. I'll
Yeah.
just get it with that money that I earned from that. And
And these are
yeah,
things that are being built right now. So these things will bring in
absolutely.
more income down the line.
As they
Anything
grow.
honestly that will bring passive income or income that where you don't have to be away from your family for large periods of time are going to be awesome, right? And entrepreneurial things lend themselves to that where you
Yeah.
can, if you've written books, then like there's money coming in and you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours at a 9 to 5 every day. So these are just things that are awesome things to get into if you're thinking about being a homeschool parent.
Yeah, and there's so many avenues you can take. Started, I've known other like stay-at-home moms, homeschool moms that, they start baking and they sell that. They turn their hobbies into something that they can
Streams
bring
of income.
income. Yeah, like whether it's that, whether it's making t-shirts, like starting your own like clothing line, or
Yeah.
making soap and selling some soap, especially natural soap. I mean, there's a lot of people that love natural ingredient stuff. Um, yeah, just there's so many avenues you can go with that. It's honestly endless. And so, my advice to you from woman to woman, go to where you feel God is calling you. And if you feel like He's calling for you to monetize one of your hobbies, go for it. Do what the Lord is saying, because He knows He knows why He's telling you to do it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much. God knows why He's having you do that thing.
And the
So
Lord
start that
is and the
business.
Lord is saying that to a lot of people in this
Yes.
season, and for that particular reason, so that you can be financially stable, but also not be dependent on the 9 to 5. When you're not dependent on that 9 to 5, you have a
Yeah.
lot of freedom and a lot of liberty to do other things that He's calling you to do, whether that's to spread the gospel, whether that's to be a stay-at-home mom, whether that's to go into ministry or to lead Bible studies and to just be present for the things that He wants you to pay attention to. Unfortunately, school systems don't necessarily teach us that that's a valuable thing. They teach you more to be an employee, um, to be somebody that is a good person to work 9 to 5s. But they don't necessarily raise you up to be independent, free thinkers. Go start a business, go be entrepreneurial. That's something that will a lot of the times never be brought up in the school system. You'll have to figure it out for yourself, or if your family owned a business, then they would be putting that in your ear, and then you would probably do the same thing. Or a lot of people inherit businesses because their families own a business, but schools don't teach that. What do you want to be? You want to be a doctor? You want to be a lawyer? You want to be a nurse? All of these are 9 to 5 things. Okay.
Or more.
Or more, 12
Yeah.
hour things. Um, Okay. Let me keep going. I have a few more things, and we want to go ahead and wrap it up here. Um, Homeschoolers don't learn the right things. That's one of the stereotypes. Homeschoolers don't learn the right things, and I'm glad that this is being brought up because there's actually laws right now that are trying to restrict homeschooling parents
In
um,
Illinois.
in Illinois.
Yeah,
And I know in other places, but in Illinois, because that's where we live, we know
specifically.
about it. Um, they're trying to restrict homeschoolers. Uh, Trying to be very intentional about making homeschool parents teach their children the same things that are being taught in public schools.
Well, technically, yes, you would be teaching them because you need the basics, right? You do need curriculum, which is a standard.
Hmm.
So that there's nothing necessarily like wrong there, but they are trying to like restrict homeschooling parents from homeschooling if you don't have a degree per se, like things like that. If you I don't know, like being up to date with vaccines. Now I know um that's a whole other controversial topic, which we're not going to get into too much deep right now, but like, just requiring that, children are up to date with those and the wellness visits, in order to participate in extracurricular activities, even though they don't attend a school, but like, just being able to attend, like, being on a basketball team, things like that. Technically, students, or yeah, homeschooled kids can join those things, but what Illinois is pushing for is that they would be, vaxxed, which
Yeah.
is, like I said, another controversial topic, which we won't get into right now, but um, definitely not everyone's on board with that, obviously. Let me see. I think one of the other things, oh, they are wanting parents to require uh yeah, they are wanting to require parents to let the state know that they are actually going to homeschool. But what that does is it allows more government interference, which is what the point of homeschooling kind of is, because homeschooling is freedom in a lot of ways. And once the government gets a hold of it, like,
Yeah.
you get a lot of those freedoms like stripped away from
Yeah,
you.
they want to come
And
and like
so,
check and make sure that once again, like that you're doing what they want you to do and teaching what they want you to teach. And as I mentioned
yes.
before, some of the things that you're going to be learning or that they expect you to teach are just like base level things. Like
Yeah,
teach
like
them math, teach them subtraction.
mhm,
But some of the things, that they're teaching in the school system, the very things that you don't want in your homes, if they're forcing you to teach your children those things, even though you're homeschooling and you think you're getting away
Hmm.
from it, but they're coming into your home and they're saying, no, you have to teach them this because this is what the book says. You're not allowed to, if they were, you're not allowed to teach them from a Christian perspective. Like, you need to teach them what this book says, or else you're not teaching them the right things. That has been known to happen. And so that's not necessarily something that, as a homeschool parent, especially as a Christian parent who's homeschooling, that you want them to do. Because if the book says, like, girls are boys and boys are girls, and you just have to teach that because it's in the textbook, and then there's no point in homeschooling if they're going to force you to do it, right? And I believe that they're doing that intentionally because they want that control, to be able to force everybody in society to be of one mind, and to be able to accept all of the agendas of the enemy, and not have anybody like on the outside of that. And it's easy for them to do that in a school system, but it's not easy to do that whenever you're homeschooling a child.
Yeah.
And so one of the stereotypes, once again, that was homeschoolers don't learn the right things. Okay, they won't learn the right things. um I will say this: it depends on who you are. The homeschooling is not for everybody, because they have some
Right.
parents that get angry really quickly and they like beat
The
the child to
patience.
death.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
they
That's
they have
terrible.
some parents who are not very intellectually inclined, who, I don't know, maybe it might be helpful for you to have lean on the school system and just be intentional about checking in with your child and seeing what they're learning. And do these things happen in school? Are these uh things that they're having you do? And just training them up in the ways of, like, okay, hey, look,
Yeah.
we don't celebrate this, we don't do this, here's why. This is how you handle these situations. For some people, that's going to be the obvious best situation, because, once again, as much as I believe in homeschooling, I understand that it's not something that everybody can do.
Yeah.
Not everybody's built that way, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And I do think that it's something, if you feel God is calling you to, absolutely step into that. Pray about it, talk to your spouse, make
Yeah,
sure you guys are on the same page too, because that's also important. But if God is calling you to that, I think that you should be obedient to God's voice and walk in that confidently and know that God will provide you with the necessary resources that you need and the right people, to ask
yeah,
questions
absolutely.
and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Another one: your child won't have any friends.
mhm,
Misconception. Okay, a lot of times when you're homeschooling, especially from a Christian perspective, I won't try to speak from any other perspective, but if you're a Christian parent homeschooling, your child will naturally have friends at church, and uh, children that you will more intentionally pick out for them to hang out with, their based off of their upbringing and based off of their parents, not just throwing them in a sea of children and they're just going to end up with whoever they end up with. Okay, so this is actually a benefit, rather than they're not going to have any friends. No, they're going to have friends that are chosen very intentionally. They're going to have friends that are from church, and they're going to have friends that you're choosing with intention, because these are children that I want to be hanging around my child.
yeah,
They have the same values,
children
the same
whose parents
beliefs.
we know and we trust that we have good relationships with that are also like minded believers.
Yeah,
That's what Neil means by picking like their friends too. And like it's so funny, we've had this conversation with other Christian couples that have children, and we're just like, we talk and like, we're like, yeah, let's definitely hang out again. Like, I'm discerning that this person is definitely, a good person to have around, to have a friendship with, and to develop a friendship if we're just starting to get to know each other, and let's go further, develop a friendship, and have their kids over, or we go over their place, or like, let's hang out. Right now
yeah,
I don't actually have a car, but I've been offered by some of these friends of ours, like, hey, let me come pick you up and we can go have a play date with our babies or something. And I love that, because I like I miss going out. I didn't necessarily go out a whole lot, back in the day, but I definitely don't get to go out as much now because we only have one car. So, like, even if I have to go grocery shopping or things like that, it's a little harder just because, like, I actually have to wait for Neil to get home to do all that. But even just to like do simple things, like if I want to take Ellie and I to like the library, or let's go, I don't know, to a museum or whatever, it's nice to know that I have some friends now that do have cars, and they're just like, "Hey, Arlene, let's get together. Let's get our babies together and let's go here and let them play." And I know that this person loves the Lord. They are teaching their children some good things, very similar to what I'm teaching my children, and we get along very well and we have a great friendship, and it's not like a surface level friendship,
Right.
and it's awesome. And I think you need those types of people, one,
Yeah,
as a Christian, especially if you're a parent, but also like for your children's sake of
yeah.
having
I think that it's so there's so much value in your children being around like-minded believers,
for
because
sure.
whenever your child is in whenever your child is around like-minded believers, they're going to push each other in the same direction. They're going to push each other in towards God. So things that are uncomfortable for your child is going to be naturally uncomfortable for another that child as well. Whereas in the school system, it's going to be like a lot of the times what I experienced was like I'm trying to be like save myself for marriage because I'm trying to follow the Lord, and everybody's like, oh, that's weird, oh, you're this and you're that, or oh, you don't celebrate this, you don't celebrate that, oh, you're weird, that's kind of weird. And then some people will try to make you do it anyways, you know because they just think it's weird and they think it's funny to try to get you to go against your beliefs. Oh, you don't cuss? Oh, that's kind of strange. So then they're going to start cussing around you
Well,
more and
that and
joke about
some
it.
kids know a little too much,
Yeah,
more
there's a
than
lot of things.
others, and you guys know what I mean. If you're an adult, you know what I mean. Some kids know a little too much. And I personally do not want my kids exposed to stuff like that.
Yeah,
As a parent, you are responsible for your child. You are going to give an account to God for your child. And so I don't take that lightly. So
it's good.
um, I would say I'm very, like, Neil and I are very intentional with who we let around, our son, and, who we are friends with too, because, not everybody has good intentions for you or your family. And um you need to use God's discernment and his wisdom in making godly choices, whether it's friendships, whether it's keeping some relationships, or cutting off some other things, whatever the case may be. I truly believe that God will guide you and he will give you the wisdom and discernment necessary. um and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, beautifully said. And so I don't want to take too much more of your time, but these are the things that the Lord has placed on our hearts. So we shared with you some reasons to homeschool, some reasons that maybe some people shouldn't homeschool. Okay, not it's not a one size fits all. Some things that are actually taking place in the school system, things on governmental levels and things like this. So these are just things that we wanted to share with you, so that uh, if the Lord is calling you to homeschool, if this is something that the Lord has placed on your heart, as He is doing this a lot in this season with a lot of people, um, we want to encourage you that there's a lot of value in doing so.
Absolutely. And I want to add too, a lot of people will tell you, "Oh, why are you doing this? Like, are you just trying to shelter them because you're scared, because you're fearful?" Let me tell you, Neil and I are not scared. We are not doing this out of fear. We're simply being obedient and being very intentional, because we don't
Yeah.
take the
Vigilant.
calling of being a parent and giving an account to God for our children. We don't take any of that lightly. We don't mess around with things that God says are evil, demonic, whatever, that they're an abomination to God. We don't mess around with those things. And
Yeah.
we don't, yeah, we're just very intentional with what we allow in our home, who we allow in our home, um, and who comes around our children. Well, right now, our child.
Right.
And we will stay that way, because like I said, not everyone has good intentions. There are very evil people out here. And you need to stay vigilant, right? The word of God says to um pray without ceasing. He also says that comparing Satan to a roaring lion, looking to whom he will devour, because his plan is to come, kill, steal, and destroy. He is a destroyer of families.
Yeah,
The
he hates
family
families.
is a design from God, and he will do anything to dismantle a family.
Right.
And so, um, don't do things out of fear. Do them out of obedience. Obedience is greater than sacrifice.
Right.
And
And think about ultimately what that means for your child.
yeah.
Um, if you don't do it out of fear, and this is not even something that you're like, I felt like God called me to do this, but I'm thinking about it now because Neil and Arlene are talking about it. Think about honestly what it means for your child. Think about what this means in your situation for your family, and think about, is this something that I can do, and is this something that, do I value my child's spirituality, my child's like spiritual growth in life enough for me to make the sacrifice to, like put some things aside and say, you know what, I am going to be the one who's going to pour things into my child so that he will not depart from the things that I taught him, rather than things are going to be poured into him and he's going to be, he's going to have a solid foundation that was not built on God because he was just poured into from TV and all types of other sources that I didn't have anything to do with. And so now I have to just try to shape him from, but I don't really get to pour into him in the way that God called me to pour into him anymore. Um, think about those things. Think about those things, what that looks like from your child's perspective and what that means for their future. Okay.
Mhm.
And so we want to go ahead and close this out tonight. I hope that this blessed somebody. I hope that this um
This
didn't
was
come
eye
off.
opening.
Yes, I hope this was very eye opening for you, and that this actually was thought provoking. I hope that this caused you to think about maybe some of the things that are going on in the school system. If nothing else, to be involved and to check on the school system. What is my child learning? What are they doing? Okay. And being more involved in your child's life and training them up in the ways of the Lord. But I hope this was a blessing to you. And as we begin to close out, I just want to go ahead and pray, and then I'm going to go ahead and let you finish out. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Father, I thank you so much for tonight. I thank you just for the opportunity to have a conversation, to have a conversation about what you have led us to do, what you have showed us, concerning, training up our children in the ways that they should grow, and the school system, being in the school system, being out of the school system. What does that mean? I thank you even for the opportunity to be able to teach in the school system, so that we have some type of insight and background of what's going on there. We pray, Lord, that you would um, give the boldness and the bravery to those who are watching that actually are feeling called to be homeschool parents, but they're having those doubts of, I don't know if I can do it, I don't feel smart enough, I don't feel like I'm worthy to do this. I pray, Father, that if this is what you're calling them to do, that you would make it clear. And I pray, Lord, that you would give them the strength and the capacity to do what you're calling them to do. Give them the resources, place the people in their path, Lord, that will help them to accomplish what you set out for them to accomplish on their child's behalf, Lord. I thank you for what you're doing in the world, and I thank you for what you're revealing in these times. And I pray, Lord, that your hand would be all over the whoever's listening right now, Father,
Yes.
and that you would have your way. In Jesus' name,
Amen.
amen.
All right, you guys. Well, I hope, like Neil said, this message was eye opening. It's, like I said, a very laid back conversation, and we stand by our points. Once again, if you disagree, that's okay. I understand that not everybody believes the way that we do, and that's okay. We've shared our convictions with you all, and I encourage you to be prayerful about what you decide to do for your kids, and to follow the Lord in everything that you do. And well, I pray that this blesses you, and that it causes you to consider some things. And so, with that being said, if you guys feel led to sow into our ministry, our link is down here below. If you guys want to, yeah, right here. Let me see. Yeah, you guys can, if you feel led to sow into our ministry, you can sow into us here. And we just thank you ahead of time for sowing into us. And um, yeah, Sorry, you guys. I'm getting something on here. Okay. Yeah. So we will be back on next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Um, Go ahead and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit the little bell button so you guys get the notification when we're going live so you don't miss another episode. So, with that being said, we will let you guys go for now. Have a great night. God bless you, and we will see you next week.